Welcome back to the deep dive. Okay, so you've brought us quite the collection of material today. It's more than just success stories, isn't it? It feels like a map, a really winding one, towards something, well, deeper, emotional intimacy.
It really is. We're basically looking at a psychological drama, but it's wrapped up in the worlds of big finance and high art. These sources, they give us such a detailed picture. Ambition, yes, but also crippling trauma and this just undeniable chemistry.
Yeah, explosive is the word, between two people from, completely different worlds, on the surface anyway.
Exactly, worlds that you wouldn't think could possibly connect like this.
So our mission today feels pretty clear. We need to weave together these two life stories, Charles Taylor, the tech, the finance guy, the titan, and Devin Darcy, this world-renowned portrait artist.
And go beyond just the CVs, right? We need to dig into let's say, the messy parts. Their personal lives, which were frankly deeply dysfunctional, and then this crucible, this intense experience that seems to have forged their connection.
Right. Which brings us to the core question, I think. What actually happens when someone uses huge professional success, like Charles did, almost like a shield, a way to hide this profound personal fear?
And tied to that, how does something truly awful, like radical loss, the kind Devin experienced, actually open someone up? How does it lead to maybe real emotional insight, real clarity? That's the journey we need to trace.
Okay, let's start with Charles Taylor, the renegade titan. He's 40 when the story kind of kicks off, standing at his father's funeral. Patrick Taylor, head of Golden State Bank since, the gold rush. Sounds like a legend, but a tough one.
Oh, absolutely foundational to who Charles is. Patrick was this towering figure. Fierce and bold leader, the sources say, but also incredibly hard to please, especially with Charles. Very critical.
So Charles grows up in this world, Ivy League, big expectations.
Exactly. Princeton, Harvard, business, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah.
Identical credentials to his father, actually. But the key thing about Charles is his rebellion, a deliberate, almost desperate push away from that family banking legacy.
He needed to prove himself, but on his own terms, away from that constant criticism.
Precisely. It wasn't just about making money. It was about earning some kind of validation from a man who just wouldn't give it. You see it right from the start, with his first big success.
The university delivery service.
Yeah. Wildly successful, delivered everything, food, medicine, even industrial quantities of condoms, as the source puts it rather delicately. Sold it for a fortune.
That's an astounding amount, yeah.
But what did his father say? He mocked him, called him the delivery boy.
Ouch. That's brutal.
It is, and it shows you Patrick didn't see the business skill, the innovation. He just saw something. Low status. It was incredibly dismissive.
And that nickname, the delivery boy, it sounds like it really stuck with Charles. Haunted him, maybe?
Absolutely haunted him. It basically fueled his next move, his next escalation. The second startup, the healthier fast food chain that went global, that was Charles trying to build something undeniable, something huge.
He saw it as extremely efficient, the sources say.
He did. But he also knew, deep down, it wasn't what his father would respect. He lamented it wasn't an elegant, distinguished way to make a fortune. He was still trying to beat his father at his own game efficiency, scale, but in a field his father disdained.
So business becomes his safe space.
Completely. It was controllable, predictable in a way people weren't. He called it his first love. His companies were his children and mistresses. He poured all this energy, this maybe emotional capacity into them because investing in people felt way too risky. Too terrifying.
Which leads us directly to his personal life, or lack thereof. The marriage to Faye, 23 years. Started drunk in Vegas.
Yeah, it's almost a caricature of a bad decision that gets locked in place by logic. They're 26, both sharp, ambitious. She was an outstanding law student, already into venture capital. They get drunk, Elvis Chapel, bam, married.
And the family's freaked out, demanded an annulment.
Of course. But Charles and Faye, they look at it rationally. They saw the upsides. Status, convenience, a united front in Silicon Valley. Practicality won out over, well, everything else.
A maintenance model, the sources call it. Just keep it running because stopping is too hard.
Pretty much. Divorce. It would be costly, inconvenient, time-consuming to work out the finances, and maybe even embarrassing. That's the calculation they made. So they just stayed, stuck in this loveless travesty, as Charles later called it, efficiency over feeling.
And Faye changed within that marriage, didn't she? Became more like his father.
In a way, yeah. She turned into her parents, adopted this very conservative business style. No interest in fashion, just power suits.
Yeah.
All strength, intelligence, seriousness. And the real kicker, she actually got on better with Patrick Taylor than Charles ever did.
Wow.
Maybe because she represented that corporate discipline Charles ran away from. For Charles, though, the marriage was perfect cover. Gave him status, structure, but let him off the hook emotionally, completely.
Allowed him to have his affairs, managed like business trips.
Exactly. With corporate precision. Discreetly, other cities, women who wouldn't expect anything more. The marriage was his shield against commitment, against vulnerability. He built these elaborate walls, logic, geography, to keep anyone from getting too close, especially any woman who might actually challenge him emotionally.
But they did have a son, Liam. How did he manage in that environment, that emotional deep freeze?
Liam's the unexpected positive outcome here, isn't he? An only child, mostly raised by nannies, learned to be incredibly self-sufficient. But the sources are clear. He wasn't resentful. It's like he understood his parents' limits early on.
He found connection elsewhere.
Yeah, with friends, families, seeking out that warmth and normalcy he didn't get at home. He just adapted.
But then comes this moment after Yale, Liam's decision. That caused a real split between Charles and Faye.
Oh, yeah, a defining moment. Liam wants to put off architecture school to study landscape architecture in France. Wants to be a gardener, essentially.
Then Faye couldn't handle that.
Not at all. For her, it was law school or business school. Those were the only acceptable paths. Her vision was totally limited to that corporate track.
But Charles, he reacted differently.
He did, and this is huge for him. He remembered his own father's scorn, that delivery boy insult burning in his memory, and he supported Liam. Completely, gave him wings to fly, as the source says. He actually broke the cycle of criticism.
He saw his son needed something different, something creative.
And he honored that. It really highlights the massive gap that had grown between him and Faye. Her reaction just confirmed how far apart they were, emotionally and in their view of the world.
Okay, so that's Charles. Building this empire, partly out of ambition, partly out of this deep-seated fear tied to his father. Now we need to pivot completely. Devin Darcy.
And if Charles's life is about controlling the fear of loss, Devin's life is just. It's defined by actual catastrophic loss over and over again.
Let's walk through that. It's a lot. Starts incredibly young.
Devastatingly young. 5 years old. Her parents, teachers, French mother, American father. They die in a tenement fire in New York. She's saved by firefighters, but she remembers their screaming. That's her first memory of loss, of abandonment through death.
Just unimaginable. She ends up in Paris then.
Yes, with her maternal grandmother,
Yeah.
a ballet teacher turned seamstress. And thankfully, her grandmother seems to have been this anchor. She saw Devin's talent, this artistic gift, and made sure she got into the École des Beaux-Arts, a top art school.
So a period of stability, finding her path.
For a moment, yes. But the pattern, it just resumes with such cruelty. She marries Jean-Louis, a fellow art student, a sculptor, when she's 22. They have their son, Axel, a year later.
A young family starting out.
But Jean-Louis, he gives up his art, works as a waiter to support them. A huge sacrifice for an artist. And then, just like that, he's killed by a bus. He's 24. Devin is 26, widowed.
Oh my God. So she's alone again, but with her son.
She still has Axel,
Oh.
but then the second blow, and it's almost unbearable to even recount.
Axel gets sick.
Meningitis. 2 years after Jean-Louis dies, Axel was only 5. And he dies within 12 hours. Just gone.
So by 28, she's lost everyone. Parents, husband, son.
Everyone. Utterly alone. Paris, the city itself, must have felt like a graveyard of memories. She couldn't stay. The sources say she moved to New York because she simply couldn't bear the weight of it all there.
It's incredible she could function, let alone build a major career after that. Moving to New York must have been pure survival instinct.
It had to be. And her art became her lifeline, her structure. She finds gallery representation, Kingsley Stone Gallery. Fast forward, she's 42, established, living in this nice townhouse in the West Village. Dining room's her studio. She built a whole new life around her work.
And the kind of work she does is really important, isn't it? Portraits, but very selective.
Very selective. She only paints people she respects, mostly powerful men, sometimes women. Even painted a president, apparently. It's not about the status for her, it's about the subject.
She's looking for something specific in them.
Insight, I think. She's famous for getting these incredible results, like she sees into their souls. Her portraits are described as alive on the canvas. Classical style, but totally fresh, emotionally resonant.
And how does she get that insight? Especially she's so guarded personally.
It's born from her own history, isn't it?
Yeah.
All that loss made her an expert observer. She watches people. During sittings, she barely spoke, but she listened to everything. She's analyzing them, their defenses, their fears, their hidden strengths, translating that inner world onto the canvas.
So the art is where she allows herself that deep connection, that emotional engagement.
It's the only place she feels safe enough to do it, which meant her actual life had to be completely walled off.
The boundaries,
Yeah.
declining invitations, keeping distance.
Absolutely essential for her. Parties, weekends away with clients, never. She needed that separation. Involvement equals risk, risk equals potential loss, potential abandonment. She identified only as an artist. That was her armor. She couldn't risk feeling that abandonment again, whether it was the universe taking someone or a person choosing to leave.
Okay, so we have these two figures. Charles, locked down by fear of future loss, hiding behind success. Devin, walled off by the trauma of past loss, hiding behind her art. And then they meet. The gallery show.
And it's not just a meeting. It's described almost like a physical impact, especially for Charles. He's there with Ted Baker talking business, a medical startup, totally in his rational finance zone.
And then the crowd crush happens.
And everything just stops for him. Before he even properly sees her, it's the scent, this faint, exotic, oriental perfume, patchouli and spice. Then the eyes. Piercing green eyes, the color of imperial jade. The source says the world literally stopped.
This hyper-controlled guy is just floored by a scent and a look.
Completely outside his control system. It's primal, instant, and she sees it too. She gives him the smallest of smiles. There's an immediate recognition.
And Charles, being Charles, switches immediately into acquisition mode. Treats finding her like closing a deal.
You got it. Contacts the gallery right away. Told she's booked for years, he doesn't care. Sends this huge bouquet. Keeps pushing. Relentless. Until she agrees. Just a short coffee meeting. Luigi's Cafe, next day. It's pure business tactics applied to human connection.
But then, at that coffee meeting, they don't do the usual dance. They just unload. Why so fast? Especially Charles, who's usually so buttoned up.
I think the connection was just too intense, too undeniable. Putting up the usual walls would have felt fake, maybe even impossible. The energy demanded honesty. So Devin talks about her parents, Jean-Louis, her grandmother, all the loss.
And Charles responds in kind, opens up about his father, his mother dying when he was 13.
Yeah, the core trauma that built his emotional fortress. And then he does something huge. He tells her about Faye.
The whole truth.
Lays it all out. The loveless travesty of a marriage. Kept going for status, convenience, fear, the financial mess. And he tells her, crucially, maybe dishonestly, that his heart is free.
How does Devin react to that? A woman obsessed with truth in her art.
She's not disgusted, which you might expect. She's startled by the loneliness of his situation. Her artist's insight kicks in. She sees past the arrangement to the profound isolation underneath. Maybe she recognizes a different kind of abandonment, the self-inflicted kind.
But then things pause. They don't immediately jump into anything. Months pass.
Right, until fate, or maybe just circumstance, steps in. Charles is in the Hamptons, his usual summer break, but then Liam calls from France. Broken ankle.
And Charles drops everything.
Drops everything, flies to Paris, brings Liam back. It's this genuine moment of fathering, of putting human need before business. And it happens right before he bumps into Devin again. It's like that act of care softened him, cracked the armor just enough.
The bookstore meeting. Accidental.
Seems like it. She's there for the summer too, painting whatever she wants in this old barn. Her happy place, she calls it. And she invites him to visit.
The barn. That sounds symbolic.
Very. He goes there, sees how she's divided the space living area, open studio, sees these joyful paintings she's doing for herself, animals, kids, deer, not the powerful figures, but things she loves. He sees her technique, but also her joy when she's free. He sees the real Devin.
And that's the tipping point.
That's when the dam breaks, they have dinner, and afterwards, he kisses her. And the sources describe it as just volcanic. 23 years of suppressed emotion from him, 16 years of deep loneliness and loss from her.
They fit like two pieces of a puzzle.
Exactly. Instant, overwhelming intimacy, which, of course, is immediately terrifying, especially for Charles.
Right. Section 4, the fear kicks in big time.
It was way too much connection, too much vulnerability, too fast. It completely short-circuited his carefully constructed defenses. The man built on control felt utterly out of control.
So he runs.
He bolts. Literally the next morning, makes up an excuse crisis at the meeting back in California. But the real crisis was internal. The threat Devin represented to his emotional lockdown. He reverts to his trauma programming, flight.
And silence. 7 days of silence. ignoring calls, texts.
Which for Devin wasn't just him being flaky or bad at communication. It was catastrophic.
It triggered everything.
Complete re-traumatization, panic. The source explicitly says it reminded her of the night Jean-Louis didn't come home, that agonizing wait before the police arrived. This silence brought all her demons of abandonment roaring back. She felt used, played like a fool, like his actions were intentional cruelty, not just fear.
He eventually surfaces, but the real understanding of why he ran comes later when he talks to his lawyer, Adam.
Yes, that conversation is key. It lays out the psychological map. Charles admits it flat out. His fear of loving Devin, specifically Devin, is tied directly to his mother's death when he was 13.
He felt he couldn't survive losing someone like that again.
Exactly. He believes he made some unconscious vow back then of never love anyone that deeply again. Because Devin, with her warmth, her insight, her specialness, reminded him too much of his mother. Losing her felt inevitable and unbearable. So he diagnoses himself, he's emotionally bankrupt.
He's abandoning her preemptively to avoid the potential pain of loss later. It's twisted logic.
It's pure fear logic. Choose control now over possible happiness and definite pain later.
Devin agrees to meet him again, though. Neutral ground, a beach. She confronts him.
She calls him out on his cowardice. But then she does something extraordinary. She reveals the one loss he didn't know about. The deepest one.
Axel, her son.
Yes. She tells him about Axel dying, 5 years old, meningitis, just 2 years after Jean-Louis. She hadn't shared that depth of pain before. Maybe it felt too raw, too exposing.
How did Charles react to learning about Axel?
It floored him. Shocked, the source says, and deeply remorseful. He finally grasps the true scale of her resilience, her courage just to keep going. He realizes she has lived through the absolute worst kind of abandonment, lost by death, repeatedly. And his silence must have felt like such a cruel echo of that.
It puts his own fear into perspective.
Completely. His fear of potential loss seems almost theoretical next to her actual history. It shamed him, forces him to see the difference between his self-imposed isolation and her externally imposed devastation.
But even after that intense confession, that moment of truth, they go back to their separate lives, and the distance problem comes right back.
Because the distance served Charles's fear, didn't it? It gave him a built-in excuse for separation. The logistics, time zones, his crazy travel schedule, Phoenix, Denver, Atlanta, her strict 5:30 p.m. cutoff for commissions, it all conspired to keep them apart.
Communication gets reduced to texts. Highly unsatisfactory.
Yeah, the source has that great line, like eating a handful of pretzels or peanuts instead of dinner, just enough to survive, not enough to thrive. No real nourishment in the connection.
And Charles's busy schedule becomes his shield again.
His perfect shield.
Yes.
Kept him safe from becoming too involved. He's described as tormented, wanting her desperately, but terrified of dismantling those walls, of being truly vulnerable. He keeps running professionally so he doesn't have to stand still, emotionally.
Okay, Section 5. Things start to shift externally, forcing internal changes. Charles is busy, thinking about selling his company, maybe going public, more control, more strategy.
Right, peak efficiency mode. And then, bam, Christmas Day, Faye drops the divorce bomb.
Just like that, after 23 years.
Out of the blue for Charles. But for Faye, it's presented as a purely logical decision. She's moving to Aspen, working remotely. Their marriage is insane, she says, only held together by pure laziness. It's like she's applying a business restructuring model to her life.
How does Charles take it?
Shocked, yes, but mostly relief. He feels lighter. The legal barrier is gone. He's technically free.
But that removes his biggest excuse for not committing to Devin.
Exactly. The external structure that protected his fear just crumbled. Meanwhile, Devin is pouring her own pain and frustration, especially after another silence from Charles following a perfect Thanksgiving week into her work. Back-to-back commissions.
Sir Reggie, the judge, and Miriam Holtzman. And Sir Reggie gives her some advice.
Yeah, the wise old actor playing the judge tells her to seize every opportunity. But he also adds a warning that her California man might miss his chance if he waits too long. It's like a little nudge from the universe.
Charles does eventually realize, intellectually at least, that Devin is the love of his life. They have that Thanksgiving week together. It's magical.
Consuming, perfect. But the perfection itself is the problem for Charles. It's too real. Returning to California, the fear hits him harder than ever.
Why? Because the connection was so good?
Because it ripped him wide open. He felt exposed. The small intimacies, the tenderness things he hadn't felt since his mother was alive, they stripped away his efficient persona. He felt like a cardboard person, terrified Devin would see the emptiness he felt inside, the result of living with Faye for 23 years.
So he shuts down again. the second abandonment.
And this one is worse for Devon, because this time she'd let her guard down completely after that perfect week. She felt utterly betrayed. He just goes dark, silent.
And then the accident. The absolute unthinkable for an artist.
It's horrifying. Cleaning brushes. A new chemical solution, sodium hydroxide, lye, extremely dangerous alkali. She trips, it splashes in her eyes, instantaneous excruciating pain, blindness.
Alkali burns are particularly bad, right? They keep damaging the tissue.
They do. The diagnosis is grade 3 alkali burn. Severe damage, real possibility of permanent blindness, maybe even losing her eyes. It's an existential crisis.
And in that moment, in the trauma unit, facing that terror, she refuses to call Charles.
It's a moment of bitter strength, maybe. Her reasoning is brutal but clear. He abandoned her when she was fine. Why would she burden him now when she's broken? She chooses to face it alone rather than risk another abandonment when she's at her most vulnerable.
Edward Stone, the gallery owner, steps up, protects her, keeps it secret.
Becomes like a father figure. Arranges nurses, shields her from the art world gossip. Charles has no idea any of this is happening.
He only finds out something is wrong when his own commission gets canceled.
That's the first blow that gets through his defenses. The gallery sends his check back. Formal note. The artist feels the collaboration won't work. A direct consequence, it says, of his shabby treatment, that second silence. He finally feels the real pain of loss, realizing his cowardice cost him everything.
The 3 months of recovery for Devon sound like a journey back from the abyss.
Physically and spiritually. Vision returns agonizingly slowly. Light and dark first, then shapes, then colors. She's healing her eyes, but also, you sense, healing those deeper wounds. And when she can finally paint again, just 3 hours a day, she chooses her subject.
Charles
Taylor. A huge canvas, based on photos she took of him on his boat that summer. Laughing, working the sails, looking free.
What's the message there?
It's not about revenge, I don't think. It's a statement. She says it as a gift. It's her saying, I see again. I see you. Maybe better than you see yourself. It captures his joy, yes, but also the love in his eyes that he had extinguished so quickly. It's confrontational, but also incredibly insightful.
And how does Charles react when this massive painting arrives?
Utterly stunned. Floored by the skill, the insight, the sheer power of it. It shatters his remaining defenses. He knows he has to respond. He flies to New York to apologize.
But he still doesn't know about the accident.
Not until he gets there. And he finds out purely by chance. A handyman mentions offhand that she was in the hospital for months, was blind, but now she's good again.
Oh, God, that must have hit him like a train.
Complete horror. The very thing he ran from, the fear of loss, the pain of not being there for someone he loved when they needed him, his running, caused it to happen. His self-protection led directly to the outcome he most feared.
That knowledge is what finally breaks through everything.
It has to. The fear of attachment is finally overwhelmed by the reality of his failure and the depth of her suffering, which happened while he was hiding. He tracks her down, back in the Hamptons, the beach again.
The final confrontation. What does he say?
No more excuses, no corporate speak, just the simple, raw truth. I'm sorry I was such a coward.
And Devon, after everything.
Her response shows how far she's come. She forgives him. But more importantly, she states she's not afraid anymore. The accident, the recovery, it transcended his issues. She tells him, the old ghosts are at peace and I can see again. It's enough.
Wow.
She realizes living means risk. Getting hurt is part of it, but you still have to take the chance. Her physical blindness paradoxically gave her the ultimate emotional clarity. And with that clarity, she could forgive.
So, wrapping this up, the ending feels earned somehow. Not easy, but earned.
It really does. And it's about timing, isn't it? Charles gets his professional freedom, sells the company, Faye initiates the divorce. That creates this space, this vacuum in his structured life. And it happens right as Devon's finishing her physical and really spiritual recovery.
He's finally ready to face the fear, just as she demonstrates that loss, even catastrophic loss, is survivable.
Exactly. He sees her courage, her resilience after facing the absolute worst, and it dwarfs his own anxieties. Her survival proves his fear doesn't have to be paralyzing.
It makes you think, doesn't it? Sometimes the big shifts don't come from sheer willpower. They come because life throws something huge at you. A divorce out of the blue, a terrible accident. Things that just smash the routines and defenses we build.
External forces that break down the walls of logic and habit. And they force the heart, the emotions, to catch up with that efficient, logical brain we rely on. Charles wasn't truly free when he sold his company. He was free when he could finally admit his own cowardice.
Yeah, and the irony, Charles spent his whole life running from the pain of loss. And in doing so, he kept inflicting the pain of abandonment on the person he loved most.
Until her accident, ironically, showed him what was truly at stake. It showed him her life, their potential life, was worth the risk, worth fighting for, even with the possibility of pain.
So the takeaway for you, listening to this, we all build walls, right? Like Charles did. Logic, habit, routine ways to protect ourselves from our deepest fears, usually fear of vulnerability, fear of loss.
Mm-hmm. But what if those very walls end up causing more pain both to ourselves and others?
What unexpected event, maybe even a crisis, might it take for you to finally see past your own defenses, to break free from those self-imposed limits?
That's the core of Charles and Devon's journey, I think. A powerful thing to consider.
Absolutely. Something to definitely mull over until our next deep dive.